Hello, 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 hello. So, it's already April 9th, which makes this the last day of Aries Decan 2, which is, in the tarot, the Three of Wands. I made a lot of notes about this Decan. I really wanted to get down and organize the thoughts, get them out there. But it's the last day, and I want to honor that I'm trying to speak to the Decan in the time period that it is. So I'm going to see what comes out, and then we'll do another thing in a couple days that's like a mop-up of this one, and an intro to Decan 3. All right, so what are the details here? We have the Three of Wands, Aries Decan 2. It is the middle Decan of Aries, which means it's the fixed Decan of a cardinal sign. It is... I misspoke. I called it the Lord of Perfected Strength. The Golden Dawn name for this one is actually the Lord of Great Strength. Lord of Perfected Strength is one that comes later. Lord of Great Strength. That was my first misspeak. My second misspeak or fumble was discussing the Kabbalah tree of life and the 4 worlds. Atziluth being the world corresponding to fire. This one is the world of emanations. We have Bria corresponding to water. This is the world of creation. Second guess myself. Third is Yetzirah. That's the world of formation. That is corresponding to swords. Yetzirah, the world of formation. Book that I've had on my reading list for a long time. It's a foundational Kabbalah text, is the Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation. Hopefully I'll get to that this year. Fourth world is going to be I'm blanking on the name of this one now. It is corresponding to Earth, and that one is the world of action. Well, we'll come back to it. Anyway, I second guessed myself on those middle two, and I did want to say that the Yetzirah is the world of formation. Creation, so emanation, creation, formation, action. Downward, downward. Greater and greater density. I think it can be just as effectively thought that these are nested within each other, so they all interpenetrate. Done a fair amount of study about the idea of interpenetrating dimensions. There's a great book from like the early 1900s called Flatland, I believe. Also, P.D. Ouspensky's Tertium Organum does a lot of this. Really, really cool, mind-bending ways of thinking about the way that reality could be interpenetrating. And then that concept, the stacked densities concept, is separate from parallel dimensions. Both are existing. Parallel dimensions can be happening, and you can merge dimensions, you can jump dimensions, they can stay discrete. They are like forking streams, essentially, and then the densities are much more complex. Like a being in the third density finds it impossible actually to comprehend the reality of the fourth density. So like if you think about in Flatland, the great image is that there's beings that are in the 2D plane, and then a 3D being sticks their finger through the piece of paper that they exist on, and what they see is a circle that gets bigger and bigger and then disappears. And so they don't have any context for the greater being that's there. So that relates to the idea of there being that beings might populate all these different densities. So energies and will and intention might exist in ways that we, or a being on a lower, if you want, density, could scarcely comprehend. All right. And I hinted at the idea that I think that the human being is a trans-density being, at least in potential, and so that we're sort of a bridge of some sort. I've been working with that idea for a long time. All right. So let's go back to the Decan. This Decan is ruled by the sun. The sun is the ruler of Aries Decan 2, 3 of Wands. What makes this a really powerful rulership here is that this is also the planet that is exalted in Aries. So the sun is exalted in Aries, and the sun is the ruler of the second Decan of Aries. So we have a lot of sunbeam energy happening here. So I thought, what's a great place to start here is to try to kind of do a little review of sun gods. Sun gods are vast. There are sun gods and sun worship, if you want, ubiquitously across the entire country, or entire globe. Humans everywhere. Not even just humans, actually. Really, really awesome, I think it's baboons, that do this wild ritual every morning where they race each other to the top of the mountain or the bluff or whatever it is, because the winner of this ritual gets to receive the rising sun first. That's pretty fun. So it's not just a human thing, in fact. I think that many beings recognize that the sun is foundational to everything that we can and do experience, and in fact was the creator of everything, including the chemical composition of the entire planet. Right? And solar system. That makes sense, right? Don't need to go into all the science of that. That's just a fact. We are star stuff. One specific star, in fact. Okay, so the sun started immediately, and let me just also say that this is, I would describe a process. I sort of have discussed this a little bit. My process is one that I feel like I hope to be able to share with another that would find this useful. It reminds me of a friend from years ago that I had. I loved getting in discussions with this friend because they insisted they would bet their farm on the reality that synchronicity is a made-up concept, that synchronicity does not exist. They did not believe in a soul. They don't believe in God. But specifically, we would get into lots of really fun conversations about synchronicity. And I consider this person a great teacher of mine, in that I realized throughout these conversations that this was literally true. Absolutely true for her. I have experienced a life where I feel that I have found synchronicities to be meaningful for me the more that I court and work with them. However, I don't believe that that's a thing that is for everyone. And that's not a qualification of better or worse than. So let this be my video caveat, as always, that if you want to argue with anything that I'm saying here, if you hate me or are angry with these things, or telling me that I'm lying to you or whatever, any of this that's like a friction that doesn't feel good, I'd say just stop watching. Doesn't really matter. It's not really probably of any interest or help or use to you whatsoever. That's not me saying that you just don't get it. That means that like we might be living different realities, and that's totally fine. And I don't think that anybody should try to force feeling discomfort to see eye to eye with somebody else. I think that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. It's totally okay. Believing is believing. Okay. So there's that little caveat. But synchronicity, and what I do in my process is I actively try to court the symbolic world, and I engage with the world of symbolism to the point of feeling that I am living in the more that I do this over the years, the more that I do this process, I feel very tangibly that the universe, if you want, or my reality is in an interactive symbolic relationship with me. Like I ask a question and start to go down a query, and then I will look up and a certain number that relates to what I just asked about, but it's not in a direct answer, say, but it's a number that relates to it, and it sends me down another path, another path. So like 15 years ago, 12 years ago, this was something that was like not the easiest thing to do. Like I had to work to get myself into this sort of state, and to work in this way, and to kind of bring my mind to an abstract place to where I could work with paradox in this way. But that's something that has sped up and has become really, really potent. A couple of years ago, last year even, and I've heard other people say a similar thing happening to them, something that I don't think can be explained just by the algorithm in some of my social media, like YouTube, for example, like answering very, very specifically questions that I had just asked before I was even attached to any technology whatsoever. Things like that. It was really fun. It's a fun way to try to interact with reality. It's like following breadcrumbs. And anyway, that's what I do. And so I was like, what do I need to do to refresh myself about sun gods? And I start looking up certain things, and I was immediately brought back to Tenerife, the Canary Islands, like immediately, and reminded of, if you visited the Patreon, you saw my like introductory kind of text. This was sort of the beginning of Always Smile. Was a trip I took in 2019 with my wife to Tenerife. Well, we actually went to the island because we were joining in our friend's honeymoon, and then my wife and I stayed for an extra 9 days and explored the whole island. We stayed in a little cave. It was amazing. But Tenerife is a really, really magical place, and the Canary Islands in general are really magical, and there's a lot of fascinating history. So this was the first sun god that like came up in my search immediately, and it reminded me that, like I was trying to tease out with this idea of bringing together the masculine and the feminine, if you want, or looking at masculine and feminine energies. Why is Aries or Mars, why are these thought of as strictly masculine beings? Why is Venus, right, thought of as a feminine being, blah, 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 blah. What is it to marry masculine and feminine in an individual? The divine androgyne, all of these things, right? Well, it turns out that Tenerife is one of the only cultures that seemingly was untouched by Western influences for a very, very long time. in our known history that had a flipped sun and moon god and goddess scenario. So there was a sky creator god, which, as far as I've been able to see, was genderless. And that was the creator of every being and everything. The sky creator god. Now then, there are other gods that lived alongside of humans. There were spirits and all of this, what the sky god created. One was a sun god, which was named Chaxiraxi. And the sun god was a goddess. She was a she. The moon god was a he. And I can't remember his name. Then there's a story that very quickly seems to resemble the Egyptian one, where there was also a demon chaos god that lived in the volcano. This chaos god lived in the volcano, had a horde of demon dogs. This chaos god was dog-like themselves, set. Anyway, at one point, the demon god, the god of chaos, captures and steals the sun goddess, Chaxiraxi, and hides her in the volcano. Now that immediately is, if anybody has ever seen a volcanic eruption, something that can happen. The volcanic eruption, the black soot can blot out the sun, potentially for days. Anyway, the humans on the island plunged into darkness. The demon dogs had free reign. They have little glowing red eyes. They're really scary. Madness all over the island. They petition the sky god to rescue the sun goddess. Does so, restores the balance, and with the energies of the sun god and sun goddess and the moon god, they keep the demon god of chaos at bay in the underworld in the volcano. So that's a pretty cool story. Chaxiraxi. First of all, volcano is in the tarot, the association with Mars is the tower. And the tower in Aries, in the first decan of Aries, to me is a volcano. It is a wild, eruptive force of will that destroys, but is also very fertile. So like if you think about like what can happen is that it can blot out the sun, it can completely create chaos, it can destroy everything in its path with lava, right? But then with the collaboration of the waters, with the collaboration of the gravity of the moon, you suddenly can expand your land and you have this mineral-rich new soil that can bring new life. There's a very perfect Mars in Aries energy right there, a volcano. Okay, cool. So then Chaxiraxi, really love some of the stories with Chaxiraxi because Chaxiraxi became associated to a particular icon, a statue that by legend washed up on shore and was what looked like a Madonna and Child statue, but some accounts say it was so burnt, and it was made of wood, and it was so burnt that it was black. So you had a black Madonna. That doesn't necessarily track for me so well because there are other accounts of black Madonnas all over the place. So I think it was made to be that way. Now, there are lots of theories about how this thing got on the island. One big theory is that it was dropped by the Templars, because the Templars were going to try to Christianize the people that lived there. I'm blanking on their names right now. I know their names. Guanches. The Guanches. And the Guanches, very, very fascinating and mysterious people. The Canary Islands are essentially a string of volcanoes that are right off of the coast of northern Africa. They were colonized by Spain at a certain point, but they are off of the coast of northern Africa. The Guanches were fair-skinned, copper-haired giants. Super, super tall, fair-skinned, copper-haired giants. Which reminds me of the other thing that I was bringing up about the Hopewell people, the Mississippians, all the way to Michigan, and their mounds that had vast ceremonial burial sites, which were centered spokes of bodies around central giants. Okay. This has led to speculation that perhaps they were descendants of Atlanteans, the lost civilization of Atlantis, post-deluge Atlantis. However, an interesting thing there is that the Guanche people did not seem to have any evidence of being seafarers themselves. Did they lose this knowledge? Were we reading the story wrong? Who knows? Anyway, back to the Black Madonna. Templars. So, like, some people think that the Templars were trying to trick them and, place this there so it could be found and washed up on shore. Regardless, the people found this icon, placed it centrally in a cave, and associated it to Chaxiraxi. And additionally, associated it to a very specific star. And that star is Canopus. So Canopus is very interesting, relating to the story that I was telling, some of the stories I was telling in the last talk as well. But the Black Madonna for the Guanches, Chaxiraxi. Another thought is that she's related to Tanit, which is another name for Minerva. Okay, in a different culture. Again, layers and layers and layers. But okay, so let's go back to Canopus. Do we want to go down that route yet? Anyway, it eventually did turn into a Catholic thing because the Spanish did completely take over those islands and did what the Spanish did in many places, and completely colonialized the area. Anyway, there's still a festival, a procession, called the Candelaria Festival, where people make pilgrimages to go find this Black Madonna. Apparently there's only a copy now, and the original was lost, but it's kept up in an abbey up in the hills of the island. Funny personal story is that when we were there, I knew about this whole processional, and we were there like 8 days before the Candelaria processional was going to happen. I was really bummed that I was going to miss it, because I was very fascinated by the Black Madonna. And there's a lot of interesting stories about Black Madonna showing up all over the place, and a lot of Templar associations there as well. However, I don't necessarily want to jump to the conclusion that the Templars were trying to Christianize these people. I think the Templars actually worshipped. Again, this is a term that gets collapsed in a way that doesn't really work for me. I think they revered the dark feminine. And again, dark feminine is something that is a concept that's tricky, that needs to be reworked. However, the chaos feminine, the unbound feminine, the unmannered, the tamped by patriarchal societies feminine. Let's just keep it at that. I think that they actually revered the dark feminine. Okay. Anyway, on our last day, or second to last day, I think it was our last day, Ashley and I decided to go on a hike. It was a many miles hike, and we were going up and we were following foothills that were going to take us all the way to the ocean and back. And there's these tiny little homes and little wineries. Wineries, not a winery at all, just like little wine plants. Anyway, and we're hiking, and we did not prepare. It was too far of a journey. We're about to decide we're just going to turn back, and then suddenly, out of the clouds, parts tiny little abbey. There's some music playing. Can't see any people. Walk up to it, walk in. There's nobody there except this beautiful Black Madonna and child, and flowers all around it. And it was an amazing moment for me personally. I felt like I walked in on the original. It felt like that being was speaking to me. Anyway, it sent me off on way more explorations. Don't need to go into that now. But yeah, she was magical, very magical. Okay. So that's enough about the Chaxiraxi, Black Madonna. Other things that are really cool before the Spanish invaded, took over the islands. There's a ton of, I got to see, these were people that mummified their remains in a very similar way to the Egyptians. They had stepped pyramids as well, like a lot of the Mesoamerican people. And these were clearly sun-oriented pyramids. Some people claim that they were about agricultural practices, which I'm sure that was at least part of it. However, there were definite alignments that were meant to be observed, where the sun would walk across, or certain other optical effects would happen at certain times connected to these pyramids. So that's interesting as well. They also had a ton of glyphs, which do relate back to the Berbers. So they've done genetic analysis, and now they think that the closest genetic counterpart, which makes sense, Northern African Berber people. Also light-skinned, light-eyed, redhead, sometimes blonde, sometimes. These glyphs, very similar, but they're very, 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 a bunch of very, very fascinating glyphs. Some look like, and I can't remember the name of it, but the Pythagorean dots, the 4, 3, 2, 1 dots. Their sun glyphs were really, really amazing too, because there would be many different forms of sun glyphs. That was the most glyphed item, was different versions of sun, but many of them were spirals, which I thought was very, very potent. And then they also had Templar crosses that were very likely made before the Templars ever showed up there. So that brings us back to, what were the Templars actually? What were they actually doing? I wonder if Templars have something to do with space-time. Space-time. And these people were aware of this as well. Anyway, we can explore more of that at another time. But space-time things. A lot of anomalies happen around volcanoes. A lot of anomalies happen around volcanoes. The Tenerife, the peak of Tenerife, has some of the clearest skies. So it has an observatory. Besides the one in Chile, is like the clearest skies that are observable. There have been so many UFO sightings over the top of this volcano and many other volcanoes. There are legends about the thinning of the veil between dimensions, window fallers. There are stories where people literally have seen little demon dogs. There are stories of, there's a story that was like right near, in the little tiny village right near the cave where we stayed, where a girl, it's called the Girl with Pearls, she walked with a bat to go get some pearls from the market and then disappeared to the point where her parents knew she was dead, knew she was gone. Nobody ever found her, no trace. 19 years later, the same age, she returns with her basket of pearls, and she didn't realize that time had passed. Very interesting time-space anomalies happening at these like electromagnetic powerhouses. So that brings me to Mars. Looking at the surface of Mars, we have sent rovers there, and we have done our little fracking operations where we're trying to see, like, we definitely had atmosphere. There was water here. There probably was life. It looks really barren. When I look at these images of Mars, I think of it as like hiding a very thin veil that's hiding a very fertile place that we just can't perceive. On Tenerife, there's a very Martian landscape. You have to drive all the way up above the clouds, and then suddenly you're in very iron-rich, rocky red soil. And that's where you can do all of your sky observations, but it feels like you're on Mars. But the air feels different. The energy feels different. Other areas that seem to be Martian in their landscape. American Southwest. These are other areas where people will drive and then suddenly they are in a ghost town, or suddenly they are, there's a UFO and then they're transported somewhere else. Lots of weird anomalies happen in these areas. What's that about? I don't know. It's interesting though. It's very interesting. Space-time anomalies. There's a concept called window fallers. I don't know if you heard of window fallers, but I think Mothman, I think some other beings. Again, a lot of them have glowing red eyes, pretty scary. Are window fallers. Dimensional window fallers. All right, let's go back to Canopus. Chaxiraxi, Tenerife, connected to the star Canopus. What is the star Canopus all about? Well, it is, next to Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. It's very close to Earth, or very close to our sun in terms of light years. I can't remember how many, but it's not that many. In the southern hemisphere, and it is part of the now retired constellation Argo Navis, which is the ship from Jason and the Argonauts. What part of Argo Navis is Canopus? Canopus is the rudder. Did a lot of talking about the rudder in my last talk. Okay, we're at 34 minutes already. I can Apparently I don't need notes. Cool. So it's the rudder. Then there's a really interesting connection to Sirius. Canopus seems to be actually just as connected to the Osiris myth as Orion is. They talk about the tree that that grew out of the tomb that Orion was kept in. The 14 pieces of Orion was kept in, growing out of Canopus, the star. Interestingly, Argo Navis was, I think it was the biggest or the second biggest constellation in the sky, and then at a certain point they were like, it's just too big. It's too big. So they just took it apart. So now there's like different little, I think it's part of Carina now, but it's just different parts of a ship just taken apart. Anyway, I wasn't going to look for Canopus, but what Canopus then did when I started to go into that one was remind me of the story of binary star systems. Trinary star systems exist as well. They think that most stars exist as binary star systems. There are many that believe that our sun was once part of a binary star system. There are some others that believe that it still is part of a binary star system. The duration of time for a binary system to do its gravitational thing is so long that we would find it incredibly hard to track reasonably. Which star do people think is our companion? In legend, we had something called Nemesis. Currently, including the Golden Dawn people, including Fulcanelli, including many modern people, they think that it's Sirius. Sirius is our companion star. What's Canopus to do with all of this? They think that ancient people that understood these dynamics used both Sirius and Canopus to measure the precession, to measure what in India is called the Yuga cycle. In 1894, there was a book that came out by, I'll forget his name. It's called The Holy Science, though. A yogi that described in great detail the Yuga cycle and about how it's about the movement of a twin sun system. When the gravitation gets stronger between the two bodies, time, the Yuga cycle, speeds up. Or maybe it's reverse of that. I can't remember. I think it's that. And then when it's further away, time slows down. Anyway, Holy Science, very interesting. Wow, I'm having trouble with names. It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. The Holy Science. Then there's another book called Lost Star of Myth and Time. Cruttendam, Walter Cruttendam, 2004. That one also discusses the potential of Sirius and other things, but just in general, the idea that could our sun be part of a binary star system? Okay, binary star system. Sun, the sun. Okay, we're back to the sun. Did I want to say anything else about the sun and the binary sun system? Okay, I was doing my dawn, a couple of my dawn Eastern, like sunrise photographs, digital pictures with Stellarium software. And I found a new, so we have pretty much the same ones. You can move 10 degrees, you're not going to see a ton of different constellations on the sunrise. So you still see Cetus, you still see all those, but I moved things around, and there was one that I hadn't really considered before, this little guy called Triangulum. That just came over on the, to the eastern horizon. Triangulum, another inanimate object constellation. It is corresponding to Ceres, the goddess Ceres, and Sicily. So then you bring in another dying and rebirthing god myth, because you have Persephone. Persephone lived in Sicily before she was taken to the underworld. And then you can also go ahead and let's bring in Hecate, because Hecate is the one who helped guide Persephone out of the underworld, or guide those to find Persephone in the underworld. Dark goddess who's capable of moving through the underworld. Hecate, really, really awesome one. Diana, Luna, Hecate. Those three, the triple sun goddess, triple moon goddess, I mean. Okay. So Sicily, Triangulum, Sicily, Ceres. What's going on in that little triangulum? Well, there is a little nebula, it's massive, a nebula called Messier 33. There's 33 again. There's another dying, rebirthing god. 33, Jesus Christ. Messier 33. What's cool about Messier 33? Well, there is a plasma stream, some sort of stream that they've been able to identify that connects it all the way to the Andromeda Galaxy, making them think that it was either part of the Andromeda Galaxy or it interacted with the Andromeda Galaxy at one point. So that's pretty interesting. Messier 33 is also a binary star system, but here's something interesting about this one. One of the two stars in the binary star system went supernova and is now a black hole. So now you have a black hole and a star that are doing their thing together still, and we're trying to observe what that's about, what that means. So that's interesting. Messier 33. Okay, Triangulum, Argo Navis way down there, and Canopus. And we thought that Sirius and Canopus measured from Egypt. We were measuring like when you have, I don't remember what the technical name is, but when you have something that like raises the water to a certain point, there's like Canopus and Sirius, they're like connected. So we're measuring certain ways, so we're finding distance from our sister, our twin star, by knowing where the horizon is between those two, kind of thing, I think, is what I was trying to gather from these searches. And then there's the whole like biblical, this time will be fire. So if one is if we're measuring the one, we are gonna have the deluge. We're gonna have the flood. We tipped in that direction, the flood direction, or we're tipping in the fire direction. Okay. Aries, Mars, Sun, and then when we go to the next decan, it's going to be Venus that's ruling that one. This Aries decan trajectory is really, really interesting. I want to talk about, in the next one, I want to talk about Julius Caesar. Because Julius Caesar claimed lineage from the marriage of Mars and Venus. And he was the sun. He was a sun king. He was not a king, but the emperor. But what did he do? Let's go to that one next time. We're at 45 minutes already. Let's just do a little bit more sky stuff about the sun. The sun is such a potent measurer of our experience. The sun moves through, in terms of astrology, moves through all of the houses each day. 12 approximate daytime hours, 12 approximate nighttime hours. The sun rises on the horizon, sets, rests in the western skies, roots, and then reaches at the midheaven every day. They say the sun in the house, Hellenistic house systems, they said the sun had its joy in the 9th house, which is where the 9th house and the 10th house, the cusp there, is the midheaven point. It's at its highest. It's at its joy. It's so happy. The sun then also moves through the entire zodiacal story in a year, in 360 degrees. So a day forget how this worked. It was like a day as a year, and then it moves through, and each day it moves a degree, essentially, ish. So you have a degree per day, and a year per day, astrological year. Okay, starting to meander a bit, I suppose. So let's just go ahead and wrap this up. The sun is kind of the key to this entire memory palace journey as well, because we're using the sun to track everything. At the equinox, the Aries equinox, is when we went outside to look to see what constellation was on the horizon on the equinox, to know what age we're in terms of precession. I did want to say that about, most people think that the wobble, the 23.5 degree, 23.43 degree wobble of the Earth on the axis is the reason why the precession cycle moves a degree backwards every 72 years. However, we don't actually know that that's exactly, I don't think we actually know that that's exactly what. So this is what some people are trying to use the binary star system as an explanation for the movement to the precession as well. So that's interesting, something to dig into further. All right. I had some more stuff I wanted to say about Mars. I really do believe that we have Aries and Eris. Eris is the god of Mars. The name of Mars, changed name from Greek to Roman, is a misunderstood being, like most of these are. And I feel like we've projected a lot of human traits onto them. I had a whole thing to talk about with God of War and service to self versus service to others, and psychopathy, and the interpenetrating densities, and whether or not there are higher density beings that don't have our best interest at heart, and whether or not we're being manipulated to experience Martian energy through a base instinctual kind of apprehension. We might have to unpack that next week. I think it's been enough time. All right. It's getting late. I got to get up early tomorrow. Hope this was fun. We'll see you next time.